And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's suggestion comes to us from Gamer Forever, who asked the question, what is the Pokemon team of Pugsly Addams? Now, don't judge me on the image I chose for Pugsley. This is the first one that I could just do this with. It was just an image on its own, not like having a background to it. I've already done Wednesday, Gomez, and Morticia, so it might as well make sense we get on the Pugsley. There's only and I think Cousin It I've done also. So there's really only a handful left in the Addams family. Mama Addams, I know, have been suggested. Lurch, Thing, I'm pretty sure I've been asked about. Pugsley is interesting. There's when looking up his personality, he's given the kind of same description as Wednesday, but in a different aspect. Depending on how you look at him in some of the series, he can either be very volatile, mischievous, destructive, or he's very soft-spoken and gentle and kind compared to Wednesday. I think it's okay to go a bit more on the destructive side because that gives us more to work with. Starting off for the beginning with the starter, we have Pignite. Why Pignite? Well, Pignite's fire gives off a destructive gives him the destructive capabilities. It's got dynamite in the name Pig and Night, so ignite, dynamite sort of thing there. But also, I remember specifically in the animated one, he acted a bit like a pig when meeting the pig-turned-girl hybrid in the second animated movie. So I like that idea that he has no problem acting like an animal. He's also very kind of stout and portly a lot of the time, at least in his depictions. And I went with Pignite over Emboar and Tepig because he's a young kid, but I think he's more in his teenage years, so something akin to a middle stage evolution works better here. Next up, I went with Rotom. Now, why Rotom? Well, when looking at Pokemon that are kind of prankster in terms of nature, mischievous, pranked players, Rotom came up as it likes to possess and destroy electronics. Add on its destructive capabilities as well as, the ability of being a ghost and therefore on the more morbid side of things. I thought it worked well for Pugsley, who's not stupid, but his intellect is just focused in other spots. Coming up at number 3, similar to Pignite, we have a middle stage evolution, Morgrem. This is a Pokemon that is one of the few that's described as being very much cruel, very much very dangerous, very sadistic too in many ways. It's not a friendly Pokemon. And I think that leans itself well towards the other aspects of his personality. The more, beyond mischievous, the more cruel-ish sides of his mentality, to be sure. Last but not least, he is a lover of explosives. He likes to fish with hand grenades. In the anime movies, instead of blades, he leans more towards explosives. So 3 Voltorbs on the team. I think that works out just, whoop, there we go, hold on. Oh, no, there I am. Where am I? Come on. There we go. Why are you all the way down there? No, I want Pugsley. No, there we go. Anyway, 3 Voltors, because if he's going to have grenades on him, makes sense that these are his grenades. Now, looking at this team, you might say, well, I now have an Electrode on there. I could have. It makes more sense. Voltorb is smaller, and it's you could literally just kind of toss. Electrode's a little too big for that, so that's why I went with the Voltorb. Now, you might look at this team and going, well, how are you supposed to win with this team? And remember, I don't make teams for the balanced nature of them. I make it for what relates to the character. And for balance, really the only issue this team has is 2 of its mon are weak to fairies, with Pignite and Morgrem. But then literally 80% of the team just gets taken out by ground types. The Rotom is weak to ground. All the Voltorbs are only weak to ground, but they're all weak to ground. And then Pignite being fire is also weak to ground. So, yeah, ground type gyms are going to be a problem. And I will sum up real quick how well this team would do, because there is a second part of that question too. Right out the gate, let me tell you right now. This team cannot beat any game. It just cannot do it. The reason for that is very simple. Right out the gate in Kanto, you would struggle with Brock with Pignite, but Pignite should theoretically be able to get over. It'd still be Tepig. In theory, should be able to get over Brock just because Brock doesn't have a lot of good options on that team. After that, though, you really shouldn't have that much of a problem. Pig Knight should be at a point which should be evolved by the point you fight Misty, so it should be dual typed. Rotom should be able to handle Hermon. Then really you should have no real struggles throughout the entirety of the region. Not with Surge, not with Erica. Koga maybe a little trouble, but no real issues. Honestly, even Sabrina's not that big an issue because you have both Rotom and Morgrim. Blaine's on an issue. You hit a bit of a wall, though, when you get to Giovanni, who is all ground. There's really not many options on this team you have for him. Your only real option at that point is Pig Knight. And when I looked it up, even though it's a goddamn fire type, it doesn't learn any goddamn fighting type. It doesn't learn any goddamn fighting moves. So, problem. But, first and foremost, the Volt should note that the Voltorb really would only be there occasionally for attacking, but mostly just for throwing out for self-destruct or explosion. That's really all you'd use them for. So even if you could get past Giovanni, which I don't think you could, your Elite Four, you've only got 3 under-evolved and 1 very low base stat electric type for the Water Ice gyms, the Elite Four Lorelei, so you can't deal with that. Honestly, Johto, the only real issue you have with Johto, because honestly, Wagner, Bugsy, Flannery, Morty, Chuck, Jasmine, like all of them, no real issues. Claire, you hit a wall. This team cannot handle dragons at all. Even if you threw your Voltorbs at Hermon, you'd be lucky to take down 1 Mon with 2 Voltorbs. They're too durable. They're too fully evolved. They have type advantage. It's just not going to happen. Hoenn, you really don't struggle that much until Liza and Tate. And Liza and Tate, even then, you might be able to throw something up. But the problem is, once you're with the double battle, Voltorbs are now double-edged swords. Unless you got 2 Voltorbs on the team or out at once, and even then it doesn't work because 1 Voltorb will take out the other one. So that doesn't work. So even if you get past that, you're going to be stopgapped at the Elite Four. Team could not handle Elite Four. You might be able to handle the first one with the Dark Gym because he's got Dark Leader because he's got 2 Grass Pokemon on the team as it is, and you have a Morgrim. But the Ghost, you're going to struggle with. Drake again is just a giant wall. You can't get past that. And Sinnoh, right out the gate, I don't even think you can beat Rorik with your Pig Knight. Just because, or with your Tepig, just because Rock is strong against fire and you don't have any real attacks to take him on. So you might just be stopgapped at Rorik. But even if that's not the case, Wagner is going to be a problem. He's strong enough to take on the majority of these Mon, because again, none of them are fully evolved. And then Bertha, good night, Irene. Then once again, Univie, your biggest issue it comes up with Clay. Because at that point, you should have 2 Voltorb, which should be able to take down 1 of his Mon, but then 2/3 of your team still, at that point, in the remaining 2/3, are still weak to ground. Even then, you won't be able to deal with Drayden or Iris because you just don't have a good answer for those guys. Kalos, surprisingly, this was the one region you would have the best shot in because there are no ground gym leaders or trainers, yes, but gym leaders or Elite Four members, there are none of them that are ground type users. So this is probably your best bet. It's the one you stand the most likely chance at. Because honestly, you can get through, no joke, the entirety of Kalos with this team. Not even fully evolved. It's once you get to Elite Four that you run into a problem. Now, the Steel type Elite Four member actually shouldn't be that hard. Pig Knight, even though it's still under-evolved, should be able to handle a giant chunk of those Steel types. The Water types, you actually should be okay handling most of them as well. And the Fire types, you'll probably go about even with. Once again, Dragons are your biggest enemy here. Not only are you not well-matched type-wise, not only are you under-leveled and under-evolved, you don't even... none of these guys even naturally learn a move apart from Morgrim that could do anything to the Dragons. And even then, Morgrim is not going to be able to take on the entire team on its own. For Grimmsnarl, it's a different story, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But if you manage, Diantha, you're stopgapped at Halucha, because Flying Press is still going to be able to take down Pig Knight. And at that point, then maybe you'll throw the Voltorbs at him. You'll have a Rotom and a Morgrim left. So no. Galar, really, you can get through most of Galar with his team. I think also legit. I think you could. But Raihan is a giant wall because he's a ground and dragon trainer. Using sandstorm tactics, which are going to be nightmarish. Earthquake, he's got on the team. He has Flygon, Duraludon, freaking Sandaconda, and Gigalith. You can't get through that team with this team. Even if you have managed, which I don't think you can. Leon's just going to come in, starting off with that Aegislash. You'll take it out with the Pignite, and then you're going to get completely curb stomped by the Dragapult. How that Dragapult's not his actual ace, I don't know. Because again, it talking about balance, speed, and power. That thing is a monster. And then Paldea, again, you can get all the way to the Elite Four with this team. Surprisingly so. But once you hit the Elite Four, Rika ends you because she's a ground type Elite Four member. They're all relatively balanced teams. So there's that. You cannot become elite. You cannot become champion with any of these teams. But what if hypothetically I maxed out everything? Let's just play that game. Let's add that to the roster. What I do with this series. Let's max everything out. I'm not going to give Rotom a new form because that's anything it could be. But you now instead of Pignite and Emboar, instead of Morgrim, a Grimmsnarl, and 3 Electrodes on the team. Would that make a difference? Well, let's go back again. Brock again, same, but again, your biggest issue now is Giovanni, who still would have the type advantage against this team. However, Emboar should now be able to know some fighting type moves at this point. The Electrodes now being fully evolved using explosions on things like the Kangaskhan or the Nidoking or the Nidoqueen or the Dugtrio should be able to take it down. And Grimmsnarl is a beast in its own right, so you should actually be able to handle Giovanni this time. Lorelei, now you have fully evolved Electrodes, can actually spam much stronger electric attacks than Rotom, so she'll actually be able to get through Lorelei, no problem. Bruno is a little problematic. Those Onyxes you should be able to handle with Emboar. Rotom should be able to avoid Machamp and Hitmonlee, but Hitmonchan does elemental punches, so that's problematic. But you have Morgrim, who is resistant to the fighting, so you should be able to handle that. Agatha, that's a hit and miss one. Because she's technically a ghost trainer, but she's more of a poison trainer, really. When you actually break it down, I think Agatha is, although I believe she's described as a ghost gym Elite Four member, she is really more of a poison gym Elite Four member. You should be able to get through that, although your explosions will not do anything against the Gengars, but your dark type should be able to really get past Gengar and Haunter. Then you got Lance. Lance is still problematic. Any dragon type trainer is still problematic for this team. But you have Gyarados, you've got 3 Dragonites. If I remember correctly, there's an Aerodactyl on the team. So you should be able to handle them. The issue comes in with Blue. Blue's just got way too much diversity on his team. He's got Mon that know Earthquake, no matter which version he's using. Now, granted, if he's got his Blastoise team, you shouldn't be having that much difficulty, but he trades that off for having either, I think, Alakazam or Executor. I think he's got Arcanine and Executor. That's what it is. Alakazam's always on the team. It trades in with the the Executor, the Gyarados, and the Arcanine, depending on the team. You can beat some versions of Blue. So I will say yes, if these were fully evolved, you could become champion of Kanto. But what about Johto? Well, like I said, you don't struggle until you get the Claire. And at that point, with a fully evolved Grimmsnarl, you should be able to handle Claire. But that leads us then to Elite Four. You have Will as a Psychic Gym leader, or I keep saying that, Elite Four member, which, with, again, fully evolved Dark type at the level of Grimmsnarl and a Rotom, plus, Electrodes just blow shit up, you should be okay. Koga, you don't have a strong answer for anything on that team. So you just kind of, fight and rage, as it were. But because he's got some bug types and you have a fire type, you should be able to manage. Bruno, again, it's Lucy. No, yeah, Bruno, again, it's be about the same issue you had in the original time. Lucian being a dark type user because you have a fairy and a fighting type should be fine. And then you get to Lance. And Lance, while you have Grimmsnarl on that team, he's now got 3 Dragonites, still, but a Gyarados, a Charizard, if I remember correctly, and still an Aerodactyl on that team. So unfortunately, even though Grimmsnarl is going to be doing a lot of work, I still don't think you're really going to be able to beat Lance. I think you might be able to beat Lance. Let me put it that way. Again, those electrodes being fully evolved and being faster than anything on that team severely helps you because you can take down the Gary, no problem. You should be able to take down both the Charizard and the Aerodactyl without too much issue. The Dragonites are just going to be your biggest problem. They are. Because the Grimmsnarl will probably be taken down at that point. I think you can beat Lance, but it's more difficult here than it is in Kanto. What about Hoenn? Well, as I said, the biggest issue was probably going to be Liza and Tate, but by the time you get to them, well, actually, by the time you get to them, you at least have a fully evolved Pignite and fully evolved Electrodes. But Morgrem actually wouldn't be fully evolved at this point, I don't think. So you would still struggle, but I think you should be able to manage. Once you get into the Elite Four, the Dark-type Elite Four member, he's no worry. The Ghost, no worry. The Ice, because she's also got Walrein, which is an Ice-Water type. That one's good, and some Celios. Those will give you some problems, but again, the Electro should be able to handle it. Once again, it comes down to Drake, and then Steven if you get past Drake. And the only thing you got for Drake is Grimmsnarl, who will put in some work, but can't take down that entire team on his own. Flygon alone is problematic as hell due to the fact it knows Earthquake. And because of that, you're just going to have to spam Electrodes... Electrode's Explosion and hope for the best. That said, you should be able to take care of your problem with a couple of the Electrodes, particularly Flygon is a problem. Problem is, though, I believe he has 2. So, issues. If you can manage that, though, Steven actually shouldn't be that big of a problem. Emboar alone should be able to handle a lot of that team. But Claydol is a bit of a problem. And so, at that point, you would swap out, probably throw Electrode in, assuming it survives. You then self-destruct. It probably doesn't take down Claydol, but you do get solid hits in. Let me put it this way. Emboar can't do all the work. Against Skarmory, Metagross, even Aggron, and Lileep. Well, actually, it can do most of the work, now that I think about it more thoroughly. Because of the rock type, though, Fire's only neutral against both Lileep and Bug, so there is that. And Claydol is just flat out resistant. So, well, actually, no, that's not entirely true. Ground doesn't act, it's just neutral. You're not strong against ground is the problem. Steven, if you can let's put it this way, if you can get past the Claydol, which a giant chunk of your team is weak to, you should, in theory, be able to get past Steven. What about Sinnoh? Well, assuming you get past Roark again, which I'm not sure you can. Then you got to deal with Wagner down the road, and actually this is a pretty even fight, all things considered. The Electrode spamming self-destruct should do something, but even then, I don't think it'd be able to take down any one of his Mons single-handedly, except for maybe Ambipom. And then you still deal with the same problem as before. This team has no answer for Bertha. Like, none whatsoever. Even explosions aren't good because all her ground types are tanky enough to take an explosion. Hell, her Quagsire is a menace to your freaking Emboar. It's a ground water type. It is literally the epitome of what you don't want to be fighting here. So honestly, Bertha, I still think is a stopgap. I don't think you can get past her. And I don't think if you do manage to get past her, the other 3 shouldn't be a problem, but Cynthia, you don't have a good answer for Cynthia, unfortunately. Yeah, you've got a Dark Fairy type to deal with, say, Spirit Tomb and Garchomp in theory, but you've still also got to be dealing with things like the Rose Raid, her Milotic, which knows Poison types moves for the Rose Raid. It's just, I don't think you'll get past Bertha. So Sinnoh's still a no-go. Unova, honestly, if you're going by fully evolved Mon here, you should be able to get past Clay this time around. Drayden and Iris, though, I still think are kind of no-goes. Even with the Grimmsnarl on the team, I'm not sure if that's a go. And even if you get past them, you still got to deal with the Elite Four then, and that's a Ghost, Psychic, Fighting, and Dark type leaders, or Elite Four members. And you should be able to handle the Dark because you have both a Fairy and a Fighting type. The Psychic, one Dark type alone can't stop an entire Psychic team. And some of those, and they all have really good coverage too, is the problem. But this existed before the Fairy type, and Fairy does in fact resist Ghost. So maybe the Fighting type, yeah, maybe as well, and the Ghost type, maybe as well. But the problem is the Ghost types also have Dark type moves under their belt as well. Even if you do manage that, I don't see you getting past Alder is the problem. His Selgor outspeeds I think even. No, it doesn't outspeed Electrode, but you're not taking down the Excelgor with one hit. Volcarona, you don't have a strong answer for anything. Volcarona's got your clock number on just about everything here. Not to mention you still have Vanillux, I should say, which while Emboar can take, you still got to deal with that. I don't know. Alder is a maybe. I don't think you're dealing with Iris very well. Just because 3 dragons, yeah, Grimmsnarl can take those, but then you still got the Aggron, Archeops, and Lapras to deal with. So no, I don't think, but there's a chance. Then, speeding along real quick here, we got Kalos. If you have a fully evolved team, like I said, you can get to Diantha, I think, with a fully evolved team. And with that, the problem simply comes down to a lot of Ramon still outspeed half your team. Lucha's still going to outspeed Emboar, still going to get that flying press in, might even take a hit. Grimmsnarl can take care of the Dragon types, but she's only got 2. And they have, Tyrantrum's got other moves besides Dragon type moves. Gourgeist is going to be resistant to electricity, so and it's going to be immune to any explosions you do. Rotom's going down fast. Auroras, at this point, the Emboar might be taken down unless you've swapped out. And then you still got to deal with Mega Gardevoir, which is, you have no good answer for a Mega Gardevoir on this team. The best you can do is still hope you have an Electrode, throw it at him, and hope to God it takes it down. I would say it's a maybe, but not likely. What about Kalos? Well, again, it's just going to come down to Leon, because if winning a fully evolved team here, yes, you should be able to take down Raihan. But again, so Emboar would take down the Aegislash, no problem. It's got no answers for freaking Dragapult. In fact, the only thing on this team that has an answer for Dragapult is Grimmsnarl. And even then, Dragapult's still got... Dragapult's dragon move is Dragon Breath. It has Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Shadow Force. It's just going to either Flamethrower or Shadow Force the whole time. And can at least take a hit from Grimmsnarl. If you get past that, you're still going to deal with Haxorus, who knows freaking Earthquake. And at that point, then, yeah, you're going to have to basically spam your Electrodes and hope for the best. And even then, you still got to deal with Charizard. So no, Leon's a no-go. Last but not least, the question is, can you get past Rika with this team? And no, you can't. You still are completely weak to ground. And even if you throw out Electrodes for self-destruct, most of them are going to be resisting that attack. Or not resisting, but most of them are going to have a big enough defense to take a hit from an Electrode's explosion, or in this case, self-destruct. Well, they also learned explosion, but still. So, no. And then you still got to deal with a Steel-type Elite Four member after that, with Poppy, who, yes, Emboar can take care of, but Emboar's so slow that it's going to take hits, and if it goes down, you got no answer for Steel on this team. Then there's Flying, and then there's another Dragon-type trainer. Not to mention the champion, who is just so freaking weird in her team design. Like, seriously, you don't have Baxcalibur on this team? That makes no sense. Not one. Because think about this, every champion has had the pseudo of the region on their team. The Lance has had Dragonite. Now, granted, Lance is still the Elite Four members of Johto are conjoined with Hoenn. So, well, actually, they are separate. So, Tyranitar is the only one that's not on the champions team, although it could have been. You had Aerodactyl, Charizard, and Gyarados, and none of them are dragons, and Tyranitar is certainly more dragon-like than, say, Aerodactyl, I'd say. What? Because it doesn't fly? It's still more Godzilla Dragon-y than anything else. But yeah, and Steven had Metagross. Grant Salamence is also a pseudo, but Metagross is the main pseudo. So Steven had Cynthia's fans for a Garchomp. Okay. Alder is the one another champion who did not have the pseudo on his team. Why? I have no goddamn idea. You just replaced that Jordagon with a Hydreigon, and you have now completely changed the ballpark on that team. You've now completely changed how difficult that team is. And Alder's still not a easy trade. I like Alder. I like him in his design. I like his team. I think his team needs a little bit of work. But, yeah, just trade out the Drotagon for a freaking... Even just give him a Haxorus and we'd be talking here. Iris obviously does have the pseudo. Diantha obviously has Gudra. There is no... I think Hop, who is technically the champion, does have Komao. I think. But I might be wrong on that. But I don't ever use Alola here because Alola is very different in terms of how it works. And obviously Leon has Dragapult. But yeah, so generally speaking, the champions should have the pseudo on their team. I digress, though. That's the team for Pugsley Addams. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with this team. Oh, he's right in his face there. Do you disagree with it? Let me hear your thoughts. What would you do differently if you would? Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.